Rewind with me, if you will, to the distant past, the year 2005. Out of complete and utter boredom, you and your friends decide to take a trip to the San Diego Zoo. There you see an exhibit grouping a number of entrapped elephants, and as you look upon these hulking beasts of nature, widely accepted to be some of the smartest creatures on the entire planet Earth, your mind begins to wander, as you continue to think, and suddenly, without warning, you think of a really funny dick joke. And so you pull out your measly camcorder, you pass it to your friends, and you have them record a 17-second sketch that will go down in history.
Cool thing about these guys is that they have really long fronts.
The next day at work, you realize you have a dilemma on your hands. You have just created what might be the funniest video of all time, and you have nowhere to post it. You confide this in your friends, also noting how hard it is to find footage of Janet Jackson's boob online. And so you, Stephen Chen, and some Chad named Chad, hatch a brilliant scheme to create a video sharing website that would appease all of your elephant dick joke cracking Janet Jackson nip slip hunting low-res camcorder uploading needs. It would be called YouTube, obviously, after yourself. This brief video of former PayPal employee Jad Karim snickering as he implies the massive size of elephant chode would turn out to be one of the most influential creations in the history of media in the early 21st century, inventing the phenomenon of the YouTube video, and more specifically, of the YouTube comedy video. And the nature of early comedy videos on YouTube is what we are going to be talking about today. To properly reflect on this, we first have to acknowledge how much the landscape has changed in the last 13 years. These days, the internet is everywhere. Most people rarely go one conscious hour without glaring at an endless feed of online content, and a lot of people who use YouTube today do it for hours on end. But back in the day, most cell phones weren't complex enough to stream videos, and indeed most people's experience with the internet was much like cable itself. There were brief patches in the day, and sometimes the week, where you would have access to such things, and because of that, the content that became popular then was very different. I read a comment on the last Fallen Titans that spoke of a theory that entertainment online has come in unique phases. According to this, we are currently living in a post-ironic atmosphere, where our love for things comes, in part, from some sense of irony. According to this theory, online content from the early days of YouTube was somehow pre-ironic. I think this is actually a very healthy outlook to take in terms of why content which we now find obnoxiously without self-awareness was ever popular in the first place. Creators from this era of YouTube have often noted a frustration in the fact that content from this era which was upfront and obnoxious pulled in big numbers, while content that was more subtly crafted didn't entice the masses. For instance, when FilmCow would release a colorful cartoon with farcical animals saying very basic humor, said video would reach a household popularity. But when he would try to do more laid-back, character-driven comedy that was actually a satire of online content, audiences just didn't take hold. And many people obviously didn't even seem to realize that it was a parody. It's not that one of these things is necessarily better than the other, but that the audience's inability to understand when satire was taking place is staggering. Oh shit, the thing fell down. In the early days of YouTube, it was insanely common for someone to make a satire of a certain genre of videos, only for their satire to become so popular with people who didn't realize that it was a joke that it just became an unironic copy of whatever it was poking fun at. Case in point, the AnnoyingOrange. The AnnoyingOrange is perhaps most easy to process when compared to another YouTube series which started around the same time, but was certainly less popular. That being Catface. Catface was a satire of mindless, stupid children's content which poked fun at the idea by introducing darker concepts to the pitch. For instance, in one of the early episodes, there's a scene where Catface meets an old lady and decides to keep her. He brings the old lady to his house and then locks her in a room with the dead body of another old lady. This was obviously a show for grown-ups that hated this kind of content. It wasn't meant to be viewed by children. But as time went on, it became increasingly clear that the audience who had discovered Catface were actual, literal toddlers. And because of this, the show quickly became an unironic, stupid, cutesy children's program. Insert Elsagate reference here. The Annoying Orange is essentially the same story. It was originally a viral video, obviously supposed to be making fun of children's programs that were purposefully annoying, and it did this by implementing dark humor. This was a show obviously aimed at adults who would hate the kinds of things that the Annoying Orange represented. But the Annoying Orange was not popular with adults. It was, again, popular with very, very small children. And if the audience not being able to understand the humor behind Catface would cause it to become unironically cutesy, then the same happening to the Annoying Orange would cause it to become really, really fucking annoying.
It's Friday, Friday, going to TGI Fridays. Everybody's looking for a napkin, napkin. I'm not ready, I'm orangey.
The Annoying Orange would eventually go from humor based around the absurdity of its own concept aimed at adults to scenes of farting.
Today, it's the Try Not to Laugh Challenge.
The creators of The Annoying Orange sold out, and they sold out hard, and for a very long time this made them unrivaled titans in the industry. It gave them a show on Cartoon Network, collaborations with real celebrities, an endless stream of merchandising, and the means to make money which never necessarily ran out. Make no mistake, The Annoying Orange is no titan anymore, but unlike Ray William Johnson, their channel is actually doing surprisingly well. To this day, The Annoying Orange is still uploading skits to YouTube. Skits which tend to hit hundreds of thousands of views. And when you see that the channel tends to upload around 5 times a week, you realize those otherwise unimpressive views really stack up. According to Social Blade, this is a channel that still brings in 63 million views a month. And based off of my understanding on how these things work, that means that a channel like The Annoying Orange is still easily bringing in around $800,000 a year. This is one of those rare cases where the ability of these videos to feel exactly the same after 9 years is probably comforting to a lot of people. And because The Annoying Orange is still appeasing the algorithm and he's still uploading what people expect him to upload, he's going to continue to do well. Despite the fact that he's been making videos for 9 years, I have nothing else to say about The Annoying Orange. Which is basically why this video is covering several channels instead of just one. But the continuous growth and success of his channel is something that will never cease to fascinate me. And with that, let's move on to what is probably the most obvious topic for this series.
Okay, next on the iCarly, Sam and I are gonna show you one of the funniest guys on the web. Even funnier than the burping giraffe. His name is Fred.
Fred Figglehorn was a character invented by YouTuber Lucas Cruikshank. Created by taking footage of him acting bombastic and
speeding it up to the point that it became impossible to listen to. This is amazing!
Once again, early YouTube graces us with a phenomenon that should have been one video that was never talked about again. From 2008 to 2014, Lucas continuously played this character, but by the end it was pretty obvious that he was burnt out on the whole prospect. This led to one final story arc with the character being uploaded, and after that the channel was given to a new group of creators. The fact that Cruikshank not only gave up the character, but essentially the entire channel, says a lot, because it meant that not only was he burnt out on playing Fred, but he was also burnt up on his audience who wanted to see more videos of him playing Fred, and he would much rather give it to someone else than continue to have to deal with it. Anyways, let's take a quick look to see what that new group of creators did to the Fred channel.
Hey, it's Fred!
Woo! I'm Jake Paul.
Nah, I'm good. Most of you know that I Hate Everything did his own review of the 3 Fred movies along with Ralph the Movie Maker, and that's honestly the reason why I'm not going to be going into any more detail, because that video is honestly the perfect Fred history lesson, and there's not a lot to add outside of that. However, there is one small thing that Alex failed to talk about, which I think is not only important to the history of Fred, but also the story of how I perceived the internet in my young age. That being iCarly. So iCarly was a show that started running when I was about 10, and that was before I really used the internet a lot, so some weeks I would watch more iCarly than I would be on the internet. And that was sort of important because iCarly was a show all about the internet. It was about these 3 kids that start an internet show and become famous. In the iCarly show, there was another show called iCarly in-universe that was basically equals 3, but it was about 3 kids and not 1 midget. The 3 main cast members were Carly, who was the girl, Freddie, who was the guy, and Sam. Sam was kind of Eric Andre, but she was blonde. There's a lot of love triangles going on there as well. It's not really worth going into. iCarly was a pretty good introduction to what life on the internet would be like someday. And while as a kid I didn't really get a lot of the satire, as an adult I can at least appreciate it. And so in the second season they decided it would be fun to bridge the gap between the fictional iCarly internet and the actual real-world internet by writing a featuring role for YouTube's current biggest star. And so the way they did this was having the characters inside iCarly, the fictional internet show, watch Fred clips in iCarly, the real. So you'd expect this to be sort of a soulless cash cow, and it is, but the most interesting part of the episode is that it's almost like the writers or producers secretly hated Fred.
You don't want to see another Fred video?
Not really.
Why not, Fudge Face?
Because I don't think Fred is all that funny.
Do you know how popular his videos are?
It's so strange because I heard this conversation so many times growing up, and it's like someone just took that shit and they froze it in carbonite for the world to see for the rest of time. Follow me on Twitter to hear all my jokes 2 weeks ahead of time. Then Spencer runs into the room and introduces his subplot for the episode.
Check out what I found!
What is it?
It's my magic meatball!
You know what? Let's just skip this part. So the next day, Sam and Freddie are hanging out in Carly's house without Carly when they get a bunch of texts saying that they need to go watch a video that someone has made about them. So Freddie and Sam log into Splashface. Where did YouTube go? The point is that Fred uploaded a video saying that he's ending the Fred series because one of the people on iCarly said his show was bad.
Because I don't think Fred is all that funny.
Thank you for crushing my feelings. Now, I'm not gonna post any more Fred videos. Ever again.
You killed Fred! Ah!
I just gave my honest opinion.
So Freddie basically continuously gets shit throughout this episode for stating his opinion online, honestly, really politely, and as audience members were supposed to relate to him because this is obviously ridiculous. But the thing is that Freddie never gets told that what he did was fine. There's no point in the episode where anyone who bullies him gets their comeuppance, or where he's ever even apologized to. So basically the plot of this episode is that Freddie states an opinion that isn't currently popular, he's beat up over it over and over again, and eventually he is forced to apologize for stating the opinion, and then the episode ends.
Say you think my videos are funny.
No. Why should I say
Let me talk to the boy! Sam. Can I use this?
Please.
Sam, no, get away from me. No, ow, not there. Ow, raining. Oh, no. God, you're a comedy wizard.
The creators of this story obviously wanted to deal with the fact that Fred was a terrible creation and a terrible series, and that everyone would eventually realize this, but they also had to deal with the fact that Fred had just become a Nickelodeon-owned property, so they still had to encourage people to watch the Fred movies and the Fred YouTube channel and whatever else Fred was being done with Nickelodeon. But we're shown that Freddy is an ass, and we're meant to sympathize with someone who doesn't like Freddy, but at the end of the episode just takes this tonal switch to this everything is awesome bullshit. And during all this time, what support does Freddy get from his friends?
Why are they blaming our whole show? It's all Freddy's fault!
I now officially support Frappy. It's the ship where Freddy moves to a different town and gets better friends. Get this. They go to Freddy's treehouse, which is stupidly decked out and has storyboards on the wall. That's the part I believe the least. And Freddy is obviously beat into admitting that Fred's content is good, but then Fred admits that it was all a publicity stunt?
Since this war between iCarly and me started, do you realize that my Fred videos have gotten like 10 times more popular than they already were? iCarly too. See? Web traffic to iCarly.com is higher than it's ever been. People love a good fight.
This seems oddly prophetic. And the weird thing is that Carly and Sam act like this somehow justifies all the horrible shit that happened to them. Like, because Cruikshank has facilitated their web show becoming more popular, it's fine that he did all of this. And even after it's revealed that this was all not real and Cruikshank deliberately had false intentions with this whole scandal, they continue to beat Freddy up for no reason.
Ow, ow. How come you...
So then all of the cast and Fred make a little Fred skit, and Freddy was apparently beat up some more because he appears in it. But the fact that they made this, it means that everything's good now, and everything's awesome. Great. The moral of the story is...
Fred is funny.
Anyways, let's talk about Smosh. It is hot in here. Smosh is sort of a best case scenario when it comes to Fallen Titans, because usually with every case so far in this series, I've had to actively justify why these things were popular. But in this case, going back into their catalog, I totally get why people, including my younger self, would find their content enjoyable, and I also thusly understand what happened to them. Siri, is thusly a word?
Here's what I found on the web for his jet. Siri, is this a word?
What?
Okay, I found this on...
Siri, open Chrome, you dumb piece of shit. I'm not worried about the computer empire. I don't think they're gonna be... I'm not worried.
Thusly.
Alright, great. When Smosh first started, it was simple to define. It was a comedy duo consisting of Ian Hecox and Anthony Padilla, which uploaded at least once a week. Originally, they did very basic comedic lip-sync videos, but eventually they moved on to skit comedy, and essentially that's where they stayed. Like I said, when I look into old Smosh videos, I'm shocked to find that I admire a lot of what's there. I mean, it's hardly perfect, and it's rarely refined at all, but there's still this distinct chemistry that existed back then. You can tell that each video started as a really funny conversation between two close friends, and even after they started to branch out and bring more money into the situation, that didn't immediately fade. This might sound strange, but I think a huge turning point for their channel was the creation of two very successful spin-offs. Lunchtime with Smosh and Mailtime with Smosh was revolutionary for the brand because it allowed them to do things that had nothing to do with what they had done before. Suddenly, Smosh began to exist far outside of the limits of these two creators. Smosh was a weird Crack.com knockoff that posted memes. Smosh was an internet recap show hosted by a woman named Mari. Smosh was a gaming channel hosted by a bunch of people you've never heard of. Smosh was an animation channel that rarely featured the actual cast members. And then of course there was the Spanish channel, which also dubbed the Honest trailer videos. All of these things essentially existed at one time, and you would often see the channels trying to plug each other in really obnoxious and uninteresting ways. On top of that, you had the Smosh movie. They released 5 albums. They worked on numerous YouTube Red projects. And along with that is probably numerous things that I've never even heard about. Smosh started off as a simple comedy show between two people who just wanted to make each other laugh, and it evolved into an empty corporate property. And you could tell that the creative freedom of early Smosh had been sacrificed in this act. That is exactly why in 2017, Anthony announced that he was leaving the channel.
Smosh, being part of a company, has put all of my creative decisions through a filter of what's appropriate for the Smosh brand, as deemed by the company.
Now the Smosh channel is still active, they still get put on trending, and they still easily pull 1 million views a video. But I still think they're Fallen Titans in a way because it's just not the same channel anymore. This would be like if Paul McCartney had formed Wings, and then he decided to keep calling it the Beatles. Because no matter how much they tried to attach Smosh to their website, or their gaming channel, or that Pubertus show, people were always going to see it as a comedy duo between two very specific people. And with most of the creative freedom and half of Smosh being actually gone, even sketches that are potentially funny just feel awkward. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this episode right here. I'm actually planning on doing a part 2 of comedy channels from this era of YouTube. This was sort of like a general list of the ones that everyone wanted me to cover, so that one might be a little more personal, maybe things that I remember but you don't, but otherwise I still want to hear what other comedy channels you guys want me to talk about. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's @QReview, and if you want the whole world to know that you love Quinton Reviews, my Facebook page is also linked in the description, and hell, you might consider supporting me on Patreon. Until next time, I've been Quinton Reviews, and that's all you need.
Sam, no, get away from me!